Sarah Mitchell pressed her forehead against the cold airplane window, watching Denver International Airport shrink beneath a quilt of winter clouds. The hum of the Boeing 737's engines, a sound most passengers found soothing, made her jaw clench. It was all wrong, too smooth, too quiet, too safe. Real engines screamed. They coughed black smoke when you pushed them past limits. They shook your entire body when you pulled 7GS in a combat turn. They saved your life when enemy tracers lit up the sky like deadly fireworks. But that was 3 years ago, another lifetime. First time flying deer. Sarah turned to find her seatmate, a grandmother with silver hair and kind eyes, smiling at her over knitting needles that clicked rhythmically. "No, ma'am," Sarah replied, managing a polite smile. "I've flown before." If only the woman knew. Over 2,000 combat hours, 17 deployments, hundreds of close air support missions over Iraq and Afghanistan. Sarah had flown the legendary A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, one of the first women ever to pilot the ugly, beloved beast that Marines called their guardian angel. She glanced down at her business casual outfit, navy blazer, cream blouse, sensible black flats. She looked like every other middle-aged consultant heading to Washington, D.C. for another pointless meeting. Her laptop bag held PowerPoint presentations instead of mission briefs. Her biggest danger today would be bad conference room coffee. The grandmother wouldn't see the faded tattoo hidden beneath Sarah's cardigan sleeve, a detailed A-10 silhouette with the words HAWG driver in bold letters. She wouldn't notice the slight limp in Sarah's right leg, courtesy of a hard ejection over Helmand Province. She definitely wouldn't spot the way Sarah's eyes constantly scanned exits, threat vectors, and escape routes, habits drilled so deep they'd become involuntary. Sarah pulled out her phone before the flight attendant could remind her to switch to airplane mode. One last check of emails. One last distraction from the memories that always came flooding back at 35,000 feet. Her daughter's text from this morning, "Mom, please call Dr. Chen back. The nightmares aren't going away on their own. Love you." Sarah deleted it again. The therapist didn't understand. How could she? She'd never felt the shudder of the GAU-8 Avenger cannon as it spit 30 depleted uranium rounds at 3,900 rounds per minute. She'd never heard Marines screaming over the radio, pinned down, taking casualties, begging for air support. She'd never made the choice to fly directly into enemy fire because American lives depended on it. She'd never stayed on station for 47 minutes, her A-10 shredded by anti-aircraft fire, hydraulics failing, fuel leaking, because leaving meant those Marines would die. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Flight time to Washington Dulles will be approximately 3 hours and 20 minutes. Skis are clear, should be a smooth flight." Smooth? Sarah almost laughed. She pulled out a dog-eared Tom Clancy novel, her third time reading it, and tried to focus. Around her, United Flight 447's passengers settled into their routines. The businessman in 11B opened his laptop. A young mother across the aisle soothed a fussy toddler. 2 college kids debated video games behind her. Nobody looked at the quiet woman in 12A. Nobody wondered about the thin white scars on her hands, burns from a cockpit fire over Kandahar. Nobody noticed how she flinched when someone's phone alarm sounded like an aircraft warning system. Nobody saw the way she positioned her carry-on bag for quick access, or how she'd mentally mapped the nearest emergency exits before sitting down. Sarah was invisible, exactly how she wanted it. The counselor at the VA hospital had said she was experiencing hypervigilance, a classic PTSD symptom. Sarah called it staying alive. In combat, the pilots who didn't stay alert didn't come home. The fact that she wasn't in combat anymore didn't matter to her nervous system. Her phone buzzed one final time before she powered it down. Colonel Marcus Webb, her former squadron commander, lunch next week. The hogs miss you. We all do. You belong in the sky, Mitchell. She didn't respond. The sky had taken enough from her. Her marriage, destroyed by 7 deployments and a husband who couldn't understand why she kept volunteering to go back. Her sleep, shattered by nightmares of fire and blood and radios screaming for help. Her confidence, gone the moment she'd frozen during a routine training flight 3 years ago, her hands shaking so badly she couldn't work the controls. That was the day she'd turned in her wings. The consulting job paid well. It was safe, predictable, boring as hell. But boring meant she wasn't responsible for anyone's life. Boring meant she couldn't fail anyone. Boring meant the nightmares might eventually stop. Sarah opened her book and tried to read, but the words blurred together. Outside the window, the Rocky Mountains stretched endlessly, their snow-covered peaks piercing the clouds. Somewhere down there, F-16s and F-15s were probably running training exercises, young pilots learning what she'd spent 20 years mastering. She wondered if they understood yet, if they knew that flying fast jets wasn't about speed or glory or cool call signs. It was about the people on the ground, the troops who looked up when they heard engines and knew, really knew, that help had arrived. The A-10 wasn't the fastest or the prettiest or the most high-tech aircraft in the inventory. It was slow, ugly, and built around a giant gun that weighed more than a Volkswagen Beetle. But it could take incredible punishment and keep flying. It could stay on station when everyone else had to leave for fuel. It could bring soldiers home. Just like her tattoo said, HAWG driver. Past tense now. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to nap, trying to quiet the restless energy that never quite left her alone. That's when she felt it. A vibration, subtle at first, her coffee cup rattling slightly on the tray table. Sarah's eyes snapped open, every nerve suddenly firing. That wasn't normal turbulence. The vibration grew stronger. And then through the window, she saw them. 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons, close enough to see the pilots' helmets, flying in formation with the commercial airliner. Too close. Way too close. And flying like something was catastrophically wrong. Sarah's hands gripped the armrests as 20 years of training roared back to life. Something's happening, something bad. And just like that, the quiet woman in seat 12A disappeared. The warrior woke up. The rumble started low, so deep it was more felt than heard. Passengers throughout the cabin shifted uncomfortably as their seats vibrated. Coffee sloshed in cups. Overhead bins rattled. A child started crying. "What is that?" the grandmother beside Sarah asked, her knitting needles frozen mid-stitch. Sarah didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the window, her brain processing what she was seeing with the cold precision of a combat pilot. 2 F-16C Fighting Falcons, Block 50 models, judging by the configuration. Weapon pylons loaded. She could see the distinctive shape of AIM-120 AMRAAMs and what looked like Mark 82 bombs. Full combat loadout on what should be a routine training flight. But nothing about their flight pattern was routine. The lead F-16 was porpoising, nose bobbing up and down in a rhythm that screamed desperation. The wingman flew so close their wingtips were barely 20 feet apart, a formation tightness you only saw when one pilot was trying to visually communicate with another. "Oh my God!" Someone shrieked from across the aisle as the jet screamed past the Boeing 737's windows, close enough that Sarah could see the red rescue arrows painted on the fuselages. The cabin erupted in chaos. Passengers pressed against windows, phones out, filming. The flight attendant's voice crackled over the intercom, artificially calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. There's no cause for alarm. Military aircraft sometimes." Sarah tuned it out. Her eyes tracked the F-16s as they pulled ahead, then banked hard right, circling back. She watched the lead pilot's hand movements in the cockpit, sharp, frustrated gestures. The wingman was trying to maintain visual contact, burning fuel with every aggressive maneuver. Communications failure, Sarah thought immediately. Has to be. They're trying to signal each other. But why stay near a commercial flight? Why not RTB to the nearest base? Unless they couldn't. Sarah's pulse quickened as the tactical picture formed in her mind. Comms failure during a live-fire exercise meant they couldn't verify orders, couldn't get abort codes, couldn't confirm if they were cleared hot or weapons hold. Standard protocol would be RTB immediately, but what if they'd received time-critical orders before the blackout? What if they had a mission they couldn't confirm or abort? 35,000 feet above rural Wyoming, F-16, Viper 1. Captain Jake Torres slammed his fist against the radio panel for the 14th time. Still dead. Not even static. The primary radio, backup radio, and emergency guard frequency, all silent as a tomb. "Come on, come on, come on," he shouted into his oxygen mask. 23 minutes ago, everything was normal. He and Lieutenant Emma Chen were running close air support drills over the Powder River Training Complex, standard stuff they'd done 100 times. Then the encrypted message came through on the secure channel, Priority Alpha. Viper flight, credible terrorist threat. Pipeline infrastructure TARGETS Wyoming Sector 7, weapons hot, standby 4 coordinates, time critical. Torres had barely acknowledged the message when every radio system in his cockpit went dark. Complete electrical failure in the communications suite. He'd tried rebooting, switching to backups, even the old-school emergency procedures from training. Nothing. He glanced at his fuel gauge. 15 minutes before he hit bingo fuel, the point where he'd barely have enough to make it to the nearest runway. But which runway? Without navigation coordinates, without confirmation on those targets, without any way to contact command. Through his canopy, he could see Chen in Viper 2, her F-16 matching his every move. At least she was still with him. They'd developed hand signals after their radios died, crude, improvised, barely adequate. But she was staying on his wing, loyal to the end. The end of what? Torres thought grimly. Somewhere in Wyoming, there might be terrorists preparing to blow critical pipeline infrastructure. Or that threat might have been neutralized in the 23 minutes since he lost comms. He had no way to know. He was carrying 2,000 pounds of high explosives with orders he couldn't verify and an abort code he couldn't receive. Every minute he waited, innocent people might be in danger. Every minute he waited, he burned fuel he'd need to get home. The United Airlines 737 had appeared on his left 10 minutes ago. Torres had initially ignored it, civilian traffic not his problem. But then an idea formed. Commercial aircraft had working radios. If he could somehow signal them, maybe they could relay to command, re-establish communications, get him the confirmation or abort he desperately needed. He maneuvered closer, knowing he was violating every safety regulation in the book. Chen followed, trusting him even though she had to be terrified. Torres pulled alongside the airliner and began the old Cold War visual communication protocols. Procedures so outdated they weren't even in the modern training syllabus anymore. He rocked his wings, porpoised his nose, desperately hoping someone aboard that civilian plane would understand. Please, he thought, please let someone see us. Please let someone know military aviation. United Flight 447. "They're coming back," someone yelled. Sarah watched the F-16's bank around for another pass, this time approaching from the front quarter. The lead pilot was clearly trying to get the commercial aircraft's attention, but for what? The businessman in 11B had his phone out, live streaming to Facebook. "This is crazy. Military jets are like stalking us." "We're going to die," a woman sobbed. Everyone calmed down. The flight attendant's voice had lost its professional polish. "I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable." The lead F-16 pulled directly in front of the airliner's nose, close enough that the captain had to adjust course. Sarah heard the change in engine pitch, felt the slight bank. Then she saw it. The pilot's hand, visible through the canopy, making deliberate gestures. Not random, not panicked. Signals. Sarah's breath caught. She knew those signals. Every military aviator learned them during water survival training, during combat search and rescue scenarios, during the old-school courses nobody thought they'd ever actually use. The F-16 pilot was asking for help. And he was running out of time. Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, ignoring the grandmother's startled gasp. "Miss, you need to sit down," the flight attendant called out. Sarah didn't sit down. She pressed the call button, her mind already shifting into combat mode, analyzing, prioritizing, planning. The flight attendant rushed over, clearly stressed. "Ma'am, during turbulence." "I need to speak to the captain," Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. "Right now, those pilots are in serious trouble." "How could you possibly?" "Because I'm an A-10 pilot," Sarah said quietly, watching the F-16s through the window. "And those kids are about to make a very bad decision unless someone helps them in the next 5 minutes." The flight attendant's eyes went wide. The intercom crackled, "Flight attendant to the cockpit, immediately." Sarah's hands were already steady. The nightmares could wait. Right now someone needed saving. The flight attendant, her name tag read Jennifer, stared at Sarah like she just announced she was a unicorn. "You're a what?" "A-10 Thunderbolt II pilot, 20 years Air Force, retired 3 years ago." Sarah kept her voice calm but firm. "Those F-16 pilots out there are using visual communication protocols. That means total radio failure, and based on their weapons loadout and the way they're burning fuel, they're in serious trouble." Jennifer's hand trembled as she reached for the intercom. "Captain Rodriguez, we have a passenger who says she's a military pilot. She says the jets outside are in distress." "Static then. Bring her to the cockpit now." The walk down the aisle felt surreal. Passengers stared as Sarah moved past them, whispers following in her wake. The businessman was still streaming live. "Guys, some lady says she's a fighter pilot or something. This is insane." Sarah ignored them all. Her focus narrowed to a single point. Those 2 pilots outside, alone, scared and running out of options. Jennifer knocked twice on the cockpit door, the security protocol, and it swung open. Captain Miguel Rodriguez spun in his seat, his face glistening with sweat. His co-pilot, a younger woman named Lieutenant Sharma according to her uniform, gripped the controls with white knuckles. Both looked like they'd aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. "Sarah Mitchell?" Rodriguez asked. "Yes, sir. FAA Command just contacted us on emergency frequency. They've been tracking those F-16s. Total communications blackout, carrying live ordnance. Last known position suggests they're on some kind of time-critical mission." He gestured to the jump seat behind them. "They asked if we had any military personnel aboard. Your name came up in the passenger manifest, former Air Force, A-10 pilot." Sarah's heart hammered. How did they? "TSA database flags military personnel. Usually irrelevant, but today," Rodriguez ran a hand through his hair. "Those pilots out there can't talk to anyone. Ground control, command center, each other. Nothing. FAA says they need someone who understands military aviation to establish visual contact and relay information." Through the windscreen, Sarah watched the F-16s maintaining formation, the lead aircraft rocking its wings again, the universal signal for acknowledge. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Sarah asked, though she already knew. Sharma turned around, her eyes desperate. "Talk to them, somehow. We're commercial pilots, we don't know military hand signals, tactical procedures, any of it, but you do." "I flew A-10s, not F-16s. Different aircraft, different. But you speak the language, Rodriguez interrupted. You know the protocols. You can interpret what they're trying to tell us. He paused. Ma'am, I've been flying for 22 years. I've never seen anything like this. Those pilots are armed, confused, and making increasingly aggressive maneuvers. If we can't help them, FAA is going to scramble interceptors. And if those kids make the wrong move. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Sarah looked out at the F-16s. In the lead aircraft, she could see the pilot's helmet turning, looking directly at the commercial cockpit, looking for help, looking for hope. She thought about her daughter's text, the therapist appointments she kept canceling, the nightmares, the 3 years she'd spent convincing herself she was done with all of this. Then she thought about 2 young pilots, alone in the sky, carrying weapons they couldn't confirm or abort. Pilots don't leave pilots behind. Give me the jump seat and the radio, Sarah said, strapping in. Rodriguez handed her a headset, his hands shaking slightly. Guard frequency is already set, 121.5. They should be able to receive even if they can't transmit. Sarah adjusted the mic and took a breath. Her fingers found the transmit button. It had been 3 years since she'd done this, but the muscle memory was still there, buried under layers of denial and fear. Viper Flight, this is Hog 1 Actual transmitting on guard frequency. Do you copy? Silence. Viper Flight, if you can hear me but cannot respond, rock your wings. Through the cockpit windscreen, everyone watched the lead F-16. 5 seconds passed. 10. Then the jet rocked left, then right, then left again. Contact, Sharma breathed. Sarah felt the old adrenaline surge through her veins, the same rush she'd felt every time she'd pushed the throttle forward on a combat mission. Fear and purpose, mixed together. Okay, Vipers, listen carefully. I'm going to ask yes or no questions. Waggle your wings side to side for yes. Rock your wings up and down for no. Do you understand? The F-16 waggled, yes. Are you experiencing complete communications failure? Waggle, yes. Are you carrying live ordnance? Waggle, yes. Sarah's stomach tightened. Did you receive mission orders before your radios failed? Waggle, yes. Can you verify those orders or receive abort codes? Strong rock, no. Rodriguez muttered something in Spanish that sounded like a prayer. Sarah's mind raced through the tactical implications. 2 pilots, armed and dangerous, with orders they received before going communications dark. Standard protocol would be immediate RTB, return to base, and let command sort it out. But if the orders were time-critical, if there was an actual threat unfolding. Vipers, is your mission time-critical? Do you believe American lives are in immediate danger? The pause was longer this time. Sarah could almost feel the lead pilot's internal struggle, the weight of the decision. Finally, waggle, yes. Jesus, Rodriguez whispered. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, thinking. Then she made a decision that would have gotten her court-martialed in the old days. Captain Rodriguez, I need you to contact FAA Command and have them patch me through to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona. Ask for the 354th Fighter Squadron, the A-10 demo team. Why? Because those F-16s need more than just someone to talk to. They need an airborne relay, an aircraft with full communications capability that can talk to them, to command and coordinate everything. Sarah looked at the F-16s, her voice steady. They need a warthog. You want them to scramble a military aircraft based on the fact that 2 armed F-16s are flying blind over American airspace with a possible terrorist threat and nobody can talk to them, Sarah interrupted. The A-10 is perfect for this. It's got redundant communications systems. It can fly slow enough to stay with them if they're low on fuel, and the pilots know how to handle high-stress close air support situations. Sharma was already on the radio with FAA. Command, United 447 requesting emergency patch to Davis-Monthan AFB, 354th Fighter Squadron. Sarah keyed her mic again. Vipers, help is coming. I'm getting you an A-10 with full comms to act as relay. Stay with me. What's your fuel state? Rock wings once for bingo fuel within 20 minutes, twice for more than 20. One rock. Less than 20 minutes before they'd be on fumes. Your navigation systems, are they functional? Rock, no. So they were lost, running out of fuel, unable to communicate, carrying live weapons, with orders they couldn't verify. Through the headset, Sarah heard Sharma. Davis-Monthan is on the line. They're asking who's requesting the scramble. Sarah took the phone, her hand steady despite everything. A gruff voice answered. 354th Fighter Squadron, this is Colonel Marcus Webb. Who the hell is this, and why are you asking me to launch an A-10 into civilian airspace? Sarah smiled despite the tension. Hello, sir, it's Hog 27. Dead silence. Then Sarah Mitchell. Yes, sir, and I need a favor. A big one. Colonel Marcus Webb's voice crackled through the phone line with a mixture of disbelief and something else. Hope, maybe, or relief. Hog 27. Haven't heard that call sign in 3 years. Heard you retired. I did, sir. Sarah watched the F-16s through the cockpit window, their fuel trails visible in the thin air. But retirement's going to have to wait. I've got 2 Vipers in serious trouble, and I need the Hog community to save them. She laid out the situation in crisp military brevity. Communications blackout, live ordnance, time-critical mission, fuel-critical navigation failure. Webb listened without interrupting, a skill he'd mastered over 3 decades of command. When she finished, he was quiet for 5 seconds. You're asking me to launch an armed A-10 into civilian airspace, violate about 17 FAA regulations, potentially interfere with an active national security operation, and do it all based on hand signals you're reading from a commercial airliner. Yes, sir. Without proper authorization from command. Sir, by the time we get proper authorization, those F-16 pilots will either be out of fuel or making a weapons decision with incomplete information. We need someone up there now who can talk to everyone. The Vipers, command center, air traffic control. Someone who knows how to handle chaos. Another pause. Sarah could almost see Webb in his office, feet on the desk, chewing on the unlit cigar he always carried. What's your assessment of the threat level? Sarah glanced at Captain Rodriguez, who nodded. Go ahead, tell him everything. Sir, the lead pilot believes American lives are in immediate danger. He confirmed they received time-critical orders before losing comms. If he's right and we don't act, people could die. If he's wrong and he executes on bad information. She let that hang in the air. Either way, we've got a disaster brewing, Webb finished. How long until they're bingo fuel? 15 minutes, maybe less. And you think an A-10 can fix this? I know an A-10 can fix this, sir. It's what we do, stay on station when everyone else has to leave, talk to people in trouble, bring them home. Sarah's voice strengthened. Those kids need a shepherd. They need a warthog. She heard Webb's chair creak as he stood. Hog 27, you always did have a gift for making the impossible sound reasonable. A pause. Captain Rodriguez is on alert status. I can have him airborne in 12 minutes. But Sarah, if this goes sideways, my career is over. Yours might be too. I retired, remember. I've got nothing to lose. Bullshit, you've got those 2 pilots to lose. We all do. Webb's voice softened. It's good to hear you back in the fight, Mitchell. We missed you. Sarah's throat tightened. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. Webb out. The line went dead. Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, Tucson, Arizona. Captain Ryan Razor Rodriguez was reviewing weapons system diagnostics when the alert klaxon shattered the afternoon calm. His coffee cup hit the floor, forgotten, as he sprinted toward the flight line. "Razor, you're up," the crew chief shouted, already pulling chocks from the A-10C waiting on the tarmac. "What's the mission?" "No idea. Colonel Webb just said get you airborne in 10 minutes or don't come back." Razor didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his helmet and G-suit from the ready room and ran. Behind him, he heard Webb's voice booming. "Razor, you're going to Wyoming. 2 F-16s in distress, comms failure, you're their relay." "Copy that, sir." The A-10C Thunderbolt II sat waiting like a loyal warhorse, ugly, angular, beautiful. The massive GAU-8 Avenger cannon jutted from its nose like a declaration of violent intent. Twin General Electric TF-34 turbofan engines sat high on the fuselage, protected from ground fire. Titanium bathtub armor surrounded the cockpit. Everything about the jet screamed survivability. Razor loved it more than his own car. He climbed the ladder, strapped in, and began the startup sequence. The engines whined to life, their distinctive sound echoing across the desert. Crew chief scrambled, checking pylons, pulling safety pins, giving thumbs up. Tower Hog 32, requesting immediate departure, priority Alpha. Hog 32, you're cleared, Godspeed. The A-10 rolled forward, picking up speed. At 120 knots, Razor pulled back on the stick and the Warthog lifted into the Arizona sky, not gracefully, never gracefully, but with unstoppable determination. He punched coordinates into his navigation system. Powder River Training Complex, Wyoming. Distance, 743 miles. At the A-10's maximum cruise speed of 380 knots, he'd be there in approximately 22 minutes. "Please hold together, Vipers," Razor muttered, pushing the throttles to maximum. "The Hog is coming." United Flight 447. Sarah maintained constant communication with the F-16s, asking questions, getting confirmations, keeping them focused. "Vipers, wiggle wings if you can see F.E. Warren Air Force Base on your navigation displays." "Rock, no." "Do you have any visual landmarks you recognize?" "Waggle, yes." "Good, we're going to use those. Help is 17 minutes out." 17 minutes. The F-16s had maybe 12 minutes of fuel left, and that was optimistic. Captain Rodriguez leaned over. "Ms. Mitchell, what happens if they run out of fuel before the A-10 arrives?" Sarah didn't sugarcoat it. Best case, they eject safely and 2 very expensive fighters crash into Wyoming wilderness. Worst case, she gestured to the weapons pylons, live ordnance on board. "Oh God." Lieutenant Sharma was monitoring fuel calculations on her tablet. "Ma'am, at their current burn rate, they're going to flame out in 11 minutes, not 15. The margin was disappearing. Sarah keyed the mic again, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Vipers, I need you to reduce throttle to minimum sustainable speed. Conserve every drop of fuel. You're going to make it, but you need to fly smart. Acknowledge." "Waggle." She watched as the F-16s decelerated, their fuel burn rate decreasing. It would buy them maybe 3 extra minutes. Maybe. Behind her, she heard passengers murmuring. Word had spread through the cabin. The quiet woman in 12A was coordinating a military rescue operation from the cockpit. Jennifer had apparently stopped trying to maintain the illusion that everything was normal. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her daughter. "Mom, are you okay? Someone live streaming from your flight says military jets are outside." She didn't have time to respond. The radio crackled. "United 447, this is Hog 32. I'm inbound from the southwest, ETA 14 minutes. Patch me through to whoever's running this show." Sarah grabbed the radio. "Hog 32, this is Hog 27. I'm your relay coordinator." Dead silence on the other end. "Then wait, Hog 27, as in Sarah Mitchell, the Sarah Mitchell." Despite everything, Sarah smiled. "In the flesh, Razor. or at least in the spirit. Listen up, I need you ready to establish satellite comms with command center the moment you have visual on the Vipers. They've got a time-critical mission they can't verify, and we're running out of time to figure out if it's still active. Copy that, ma'am. It's an honor. Save it for after we save these kids. Hog 27 out. Sarah turned to Rodriguez. Captain, I need you to maintain this exact heading and altitude. The A-10 is going to use us as a reference point. Roger that. Outside the window, the lead F-16 pilot gave a thumbs up, a simple gesture that meant thank you. Sarah returned it. 11 minutes until fuel exhaustion. 14 minutes until the Warthog arrived. The math didn't work. Unless they made it work. Viper flight Hog 32 is 8 minutes out. How's your fuel state? Sarah translated the F-16 pilot's response through wing rocks. Razor, they're critical. Maybe 6 minutes of fuel left, and that's if they're lucky. Captain Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead. This is going to be close. Close is what the A-10 does best, Sarah replied, though her knuckles were white as she gripped the radio. Through the cockpit windscreen, she watched the F-16 struggling to maintain formation. The lead aircraft was visibly shaking now, engine running rough, aerodynamics degrading as fuel starvation began affecting performance. The wingman, Lieutenant Chen, stayed glued to her leader's wing despite her own fuel emergency. Loyal to the end. Sarah keyed the mic again. Vipers, I need you both to climb to 37,000 feet. Thinner air means less drag, better fuel economy. Every second counts. Both F-16s began a gradual climb, their movements sluggish with depleted fuel tanks. Lieutenant Sharma monitored her radar display. I've got the A-10 on scope, bearing 215, altitude 28,000 and climbing fast. Fast was relative. The A-10 Thunderbolt II had a maximum speed of 420 miles per hour, slower than most commercial airliners, let alone the F-16's supersonic capability. But what it lacked in speed, it made up for in endurance, redundancy, and sheer stubborn survivability. Sarah remembered her first briefing on the A-10 23 years ago. The instructor had said, "This jet was designed by people who understood that sometimes the mission isn't about getting there first. It's about being there when everyone else has left." Today, that mission was personal. Hog 32, United 447. What's your comm status? Sarah asked. Full suite operational, Razor responded. I've got satellite uplink to command center, direct line to FAA, and I'm monitoring guard frequency. Just get me eyes on those Vipers and we'll sort this out. 5 minutes until F-16 fuel exhaustion. 6 minutes until A-10 arrival. The numbers hadn't improved. Then Sarah saw it, a dark speck on the southwestern horizon, growing larger with impossible determination. The distinctive silhouette emerged from the haze. Straight wings, twin-tail fins, engines mounted high to protect against ground fire, and that massive cannon jutting from the nose like the business end of a medieval lance. The A-10 Warthog. Ugly as sin, beautiful as salvation. Visual contact, Sharma called out. He's coming in hot. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, but opening. 3 years of nightmares, 3 years of running from who she'd been, 3 years of telling herself she was done with all this. But watching that Warthog charge across the sky to save pilots in trouble, she remembered why she'd fallen in love with flying in the first place. It wasn't about the aircraft, it was about the mission, the promise, the oath. Leave no one behind. Vipers, your guardian angel just arrived, Sarah transmitted. Hog 32, you have visual on both F-16s. Affirm, Hog 27, got both Vipers in sight, they look rough. They are. Establish satellite comms with command center immediately. We need verification on their mission status. Is the threat still active or has it been neutralized? Roger, stand by. The A-10 descended to the F-16's altitude, its profile unmistakable even against the bright Wyoming sky. Sarah watched as Razor maneuvered his jet into formation with the struggling fighters, not behind them, not above them, but alongside them. Equal, brothers in arms. The radio crackled with Razor's voice. "Viper Flight, this is Hog 32. I'm your new best friend. I've got full comms with command, satellite navigation, and enough fuel to stay with you all the way to the ground if necessary. You're not alone anymore." Through the window, Sarah saw the lead F-16 pilot's helmet turn toward the A-10. Even from the commercial airliner, she could sense the relief. "Command Center is patching through now," Razor reported. "Stand by for mission update." The seconds dragged like hours. Sarah monitored the F-16's increasingly erratic flight patterns as their fuel gauges plummeted toward zero. Captain Torres in the lead jet was flying on fumes and willpower. Then Razor's voice exploded over the radio. "Hog 27, I've got mission status from command. The terrorist threat has been neutralized. Suspects were arrested in Cheyenne 40 minutes ago. The Vipers are weapons hold, RTB immediately." Sarah's eyes closed in relief. Thank God. Rodriguez slumped in his seat. "They don't have to bomb anything." "No," Sarah said, "but now we've got a different problem. They're almost out of fuel, their navigation is dead, and they need to get on the ground in the next 4 minutes or they're walking home." She keyed the mic. "Razor, can you guide them to the nearest suitable runway?" "Already on it. F.E. Warren Air Force Base is 43 miles northeast. I'm calculating approach vectors now." A pause. "Hog 27, the Vipers are going to flame out before they get there. This is going to be tight." "Then we make it work," Sarah said simply. "What do you need?" "I need air traffic control to clear a corridor from current position to F.E. Warren. I need emergency crews on standby. I need weather conditions at the base. And I need those Vipers to squeeze every last drop of fuel from their tanks." Lieutenant Sharma was already on the radio with FAA. Declaring in-flight emergency, 2 F-16 fighters, fuel starvation, requesting priority corridor to F.E. Warren AFB. Sarah addressed the F-16s directly. "Vipers, listen to me. Your mission is canceled, threat neutralized, but you're not out of this yet. Hog 32 is going to guide you home. Follow his every instruction. Reduce throttle to absolute minimum, configure for maximum endurance. You're going to make it." Both F-16s waggled acknowledgement. But then Captain Torres' aircraft shuddered violently. "Engine surge on Viper lead," Razor called out. "He's losing power." Through the cockpit window, Sarah watched in horror as the lead F-16's exhaust changed color, the telltale sign of fuel starvation. The jet wobbled, the pilot fighting to maintain control as his engine coughed and sputtered. "Come on, kid," Sarah whispered. "Stay with it just a little longer." Razor's voice was steady as granite. "Viper lead, throttle back, shallow descent. Don't force it. Let the jet glide. I'm right here with you." The A-10 descended with the dying F-16, Razor matching every movement. Lieutenant Chen in Viper 2 stayed on her leader's wing, refusing to abandon him even as her own fuel situation became critical. "Distance to F.E. Warren?" Sarah asked. Sharma checked her display. 38 miles. 38 miles. 4 minutes of flight time for a healthy F-16, an eternity for one running on vapor. Captain Torres' engine surged again, harder this time. The F-16 dropped 200 feet in an instant, the pilot barely recovering. "He's not going to make it," Rodriguez said quietly. Sarah's jaw clenched. "Yes, he is." She grabbed the radio. "Razor, can you see the base?" "Affirmative. Visual on the runway, bearing 45. Guide him in, talk him through every second. Be his eyes, his navigation, his co-pilot. Don't let him give up." "Roger that, Hog 27. Razor's voice shifted, becoming personal, intimate. Viper lead, listen to my voice. Runway at 12 o'clock, 35 miles. You've got this. Trust your training, trust your jet, trust me. The dying F-16 flew on, gravity and momentum carrying it forward as its engine fought to keep running. 30 miles. 25 miles. 20 miles. And then Sarah saw it, thin black smoke trailing from Tor's exhaust. His engine was about to die. Viper lead, your engine's about to quit. I need you to listen very carefully. Razor's voice cut through the chaos with surgical precision. Sarah watched from United Flight 447 as the A-10 positioned itself directly alongside the struggling F-16, so close their wingtips were barely 15 feet apart. Configure for dead stick landing. Drop your external stores, get rid of the weight, now. Through the cockpit window, Sarah saw the pylons on Tor's F-16 release. The bombs fell away, tumbling safely toward the empty Wyoming wilderness below. Seconds later, the external fuel tanks followed, reducing drag and weight. Good, Razor continued. Now give me maximum glide configuration. You're going to be a sailplane in about 30 seconds. Sarah gripped the radio handset. Razor, distance to runway. 18 miles. We need a miracle. Then we make one, Sarah shot back. She switched frequencies. FE Warren Tower, this is United 447 emergency relay. Viper lead is flameout imminent. Viper 2 critical fuel. Clear all traffic, foam the runway, get every emergency vehicle you have on standby. Roger, United 447. Runway 31 is clear, emergency crews in position. 18 miles. With a healthy engine, that was nothing, barely 2 minutes. But Tor's was flying a 20-ton glider with the aerodynamics of a brick. Captain Tor's engine coughed one final time, then died completely. The sudden silence over the radio was deafening. Engine out, Razor called. Viper lead is gliding. Sarah's heart stopped. An F-16 without engine power had a glide ratio of about 8:1. For every 8,000 feet forward, it dropped 1,000 feet. Tor's was at 28,000 feet. The runway was at 6,000 feet elevation. That meant he could theoretically glide about 38 miles. He only needed 18. The math worked barely. If Tor's flew perfectly, if he didn't panic, if he made no mistakes. Viper lead, you're still flying, Razor's voice was pure confidence. The jet wants to glide, let it. Don't over-control. Small inputs. I'm your airspeed, I'm your altitude, I'm your guidance. Trust me. Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled over emergency frequency. Her radio was degraded but functional. Lead, I'm with you, not leaving you. Viper 2, you need to think about yourself, Razor warned. Your fuel state. I'm staying, Chen interrupted. He's my wingman. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. This was the bond that made military aviation different. These weren't just pilots, they were family. 15 miles, Razor announced. Viper lead, start your descent. You're high, which is good. Aim for 10,000 feet per minute descent rate. Nice and smooth. The dead F-16 began its glide, a graceful but terrifying descent toward the earth. Tor's was flying on instinct now. Every lesson from every training flight crystallized into muscle memory. United 447, you still with us? Razor asked. Sarah keyed the mic. We're here, Razor, talk to me. What do you need? Prayer would be nice. You've got it. Behind Sarah, Captain Rodriguez had turned on the cabin intercom. The passengers could hear everything. The live-streaming businessman had his phone pointed at the window, capturing the drama unfolding at 30,000 feet. The entire cabin was silent, holding their breath. 12 miles, Razor called. Viper lead, you're drifting left. Correct 2 degrees right. Viper 2, your engine temp is spiking. You're running on fumes too. I know, Chen responded, her voice tight. Sarah did the math. Chen had maybe 90 seconds of fuel left. If she stayed with Tors all the way to the runway, she'd flame out too. Viper 2, you need to go direct to the runway, Sarah transmitted. Your loyalty is admirable, but your leader needs you alive, not crashed beside him. A long pause. Then Chen's F-16 broke formation, accelerating ahead toward the airfield. It was the right call, the smart call. It was also one of the hardest decisions a wingman could make. Now Tors was alone with the A-10. 10 miles lead, you're looking good. Airspeed 200 knots, descent rate perfect. The runway is at your 12 o'clock, 9 miles. Sarah watched the flying formation with the gliding F-16. Razor was matching Tors' every movement, descending when he descended, banking when he banked. The Warthog wasn't just escorting Tors home. It was flying with him, sharing the burden. This was what the A-10 was built for, not the fancy airshows or the impressive gun runs. This, staying with someone in trouble when everyone else had to leave. 8 miles. Viper lead, I need you to configure for landing. Drop your landing gear. It'll increase drag, but you need it down and locked. The F-16's landing gear deployed with a visible shudder. The added drag slowed the jet, but it also steepened the descent angle. Gear down and locked, Razor confirmed. 7 miles, you're high and fast, that's perfect. Better to bleed off energy than come up short. At F.E. Warren Air Force Base, emergency crews lined the runway. Foam covered the concrete. Ambulances waited. Fire trucks stood ready. Lieutenant Chen's F-16 appeared in the distance, her engine coughing as she approached the runway. She was going to make it, barely, but she was going to make it. 6 miles lead, start thinking about your flare. You're going to have one chance at this. No go-around, no second approach. Tors keyed his emergency radio, his voice barely audible. Copy. 1 chance. Sarah realized she was holding her breath. Captain Rodriguez was gripping his armrest. Lieutenant Sharma had tears streaming down her face. 5 miles. Viper 2 is touching down now, she's safe. Through binoculars Sarah had grabbed from the emergency kit, she watched Chen's F-16 hit the runway hard, bouncing once, then settling. Her engine quit the moment her wheels touched concrete. She rolled to a stop, safe. 1 down, 1 to go. 4 miles lead, you're perfect. Speed 180 knots, descent rate good, altitude good. Line up on center line. The A-10 stayed with Tors, refusing to leave. Razor could have peeled off, let the tower guide Tors in. But he didn't. The Hog stayed on the F-16's wing like a guardian angel made of titanium and determination. 3 miles, you're going to make it, kid. I can see the runway threshold. 2 miles, start your flare in. 30 seconds. Sarah could see the runway now through her binoculars, a thin strip of concrete in the vast Wyoming landscape. Tors' F-16 was dropping fast, too fast, the ground rushing up. 1 mile flare now. Tors pulled back on the stick, the F-16's nose lifting, bleeding off speed. The jet hung in the air for an impossible moment, fighting gravity, fighting physics. Then the main landing gear kissed the concrete. The F-16 bounced hard, and Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. But Tors held it, forcing the nose down, letting the nose gear slam onto the runway. The drag chute deployed, white fabric billowing behind the jet. The F-16 rolled down the runway, slower, slower, slower. And stopped. Safe. Both pilots safe. The United Flight 447 cockpit erupted in cheers. Sarah slumped back in the jump seat, tears streaming down her face. Captain Rodriguez was laughing and crying simultaneously. Lieutenant Sharma pumped her fist in the air. Behind them, the entire cabin exploded in applause. The A-10 roared overhead, Razor executing a victory roll that was probably against a dozen regulations. Sarah didn't care. They'd done it. They'd brought them home. United Flight 447 landed at Washington Dulles International Airport 3 hours and 47 minutes late. The passengers filed off in subdued groups, many still processing what they'd witnessed. The businessman who'd been live streaming had over 2 million views and counting. The young mother clutched her toddler a little tighter. The grandmother with the knitting needles gave Sarah a long hug before deplaning. "You're a hero," the old woman whispered. Sarah shook her head. "I just made some radio calls." But they both knew it was more than that. Captain Rodriguez walked Sarah to the cockpit door, his eyes still red from the emotional roller coaster. "Ms. Mitchell, what you did today, I don't have words. Those pilots are alive because of you. They're alive because of Razor, and because they were well trained and didn't panic." Sarah shouldered her laptop bag. "I just spoke their language." "Don't downplay it," Lieutenant Sharma added, joining them. "We've already filed a report with FAA. They'll want to talk to you, probably the Air Force too. You might get a commendation." The thought made Sarah uncomfortable. "I'd rather just go home." Rodriguez pulled out a business card. "If you ever need anything, a recommendation, a favor, just someone to talk to, you call me, day or night. You saved lives today, and pilots don't forget that." Sarah took the card, her hand trembling slightly. "Thank you, Captain." She walked through the jetway into the terminal, trying to blend into the crowd. But her phone was already exploding with notifications, text messages, emails, voicemails. Her daughter, "Mom, I just saw you on the news. Are you okay? Call ME." Colonel Webb, "The whole Air Force is talking about Hog 27 comeback. You still got the magic, Mitchell. The Warthog community is proud." An unknown number. "Ms. Mitchell, this is Captain Jake Torres. I don't know how to thank you for what you did today. You saved my life and Lieutenant Chen's life. If you're ever in Wyoming, please let me buy you dinner, or a beer, or a car. Whatever you want, I owe you everything." Sarah stood in the middle of Dulles Terminal, travelers rushing past her, tears streaming down her face. For 3 years, she'd convinced herself she was done. That flying had taken too much from her. That the nightmares and the fear and the crushing responsibility had broken something inside her that couldn't be fixed. But today she'd remembered something crucial. She wasn't broken. She was a pilot, and pilots don't abandon people who need help. 3 weeks later, Sarah Mitchell walked across the tarmac at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, her flight suit feeling strange after 3 years in business casual. Colonel Webb had called her personally, asking her to come to Arizona for a small ceremony. She'd almost declined. But something had changed since that day over Wyoming. The nightmares hadn't disappeared, but they'd shifted. Instead of burning cockpits and dying radios, she dreamed about the A-10 appearing on the horizon, about Razor's steady voice, about 2 F-16s landing safely. Good dreams for once. The hangar was packed with A-10 pilots, crew chiefs, and staff. Sarah recognized faces from her old squadron, older now, some with higher ranks, but still the same family she'd left behind. And standing front and center were Captain Jake Torres and Lieutenant Emma Chen, both in dress blues, both grinning like they'd won the lottery. "Ma'am," Torres said, snapping to attention, "permission to shake your hand." Sarah laughed, a genuine laugh that surprised her. Permission granted. Torres' handshake was firm, grateful. "I've been waiting 3 weeks to thank you in person. What you did, coordinating from a civilian aircraft, establishing comms, getting the A-10 scrambled, you saved our lives." Chen stepped forward, her eyes shining. "We were terrified, ma'am. Lost, confused, armed, and dangerous. Then we heard your voice on guard frequency, and suddenly we weren't alone anymore. You gave us hope when we had none." Colonel Webb approached, carrying a wooden plaque. "Colonel Sarah Mitchell, retired. On behalf of the 354th Fighter Squadron, the entire A-10 community, and 2 very grateful F-16 pilots, we want to present you with this." Sarah looked at the plaque. It showed an A-10 flying formation with two F-16s, with an engraved inscription. To Hog 27, who proved that retirement is just a state of mind. Leave no one behind, always. Below it, signatures from every A-10 pilot in the squadron. There's something else, Webb said quietly. He nodded to Captain Rodriguez, Razor, who stepped forward carrying a flight helmet. Her old flight helmet. They'd kept it all these years, stored in the squadron-ready room. Her call sign, HAWG-27, was still painted on the side, along with mission marks from Iraq and Afghanistan. We never threw it away, Razor explained. We always knew you'd come back. Sarah's vision blurred with tears. I'm not coming back, I'm retired. Are you? Webb asked gently. Because the Air Force Reserve is always looking for experienced A-10 pilots, part-time, no deployments if you don't want them, just training flights, mentoring young pilots, keeping the old skills sharp. Sarah held the helmet, feeling its familiar weight. I don't know if I can. You coordinated a multi-aircraft emergency from a commercial airliner, Chen interrupted. With respect, ma'am, I think you can do anything. Torres nodded. The news is calling you the guardian angel of Flight 447. But we know the truth, you were always a guardian angel. That's what A-10 pilots do. You stay when everyone else leaves. You bring people home. Sarah looked around the hangar at the faces watching her. Young pilots who needed mentors. Old friends who'd never stopped believing in her. An aircraft, ugly, slow, unstoppable, that had defined half her life. She thought about her daughter, who'd called her crying with pride after seeing the news. About her therapist, who'd smiled and said, maybe the cure for your trauma wasn't running from it, it was remembering why you became a pilot in the first place. About two F-16 pilots, alive and grateful, who might have died if she'd stayed in her seat and done nothing. Sarah took a deep breath. 1 weekend a month, she said finally. Training flights only, and I'm keeping the consulting job. Webb grinned, deal. 6 months later, Sarah sat in seat 12A on United Flight 447, the same route, the same seat, a deliberate choice. But this time, her laptop bag held flight manuals alongside business reports. This time, she wore her Air Force Reserve patch on her jacket. This time, when she closed her eyes, she didn't see nightmares. She saw an A-10 Warthog, flying low and slow over Wyoming, refusing to leave until everyone came home safe. The grandmother beside her, a different grandmother but equally kind, smiled. Nervous flyer. No, ma'am, Sarah said, returning the smile. Just remembering a good day. Outside the window, two F-16s from Buckley Air Force Base flashed past in formation, routine escort for the vice president's flight nearby. Sarah watched them with professional appreciation. Somewhere young pilots were learning to fly. Somewhere an A-10 was on station, protecting troops in contact. Somewhere people needed help and someone was answering the call. Sarah opened her book, not fiction this time, but an updated tactical manual on close air support procedures. She had a training flight on Saturday and wanted to be sharp. The plane climbed through the clouds and Sarah Mitchell, consultant, reserve pilot, guardian angel, smiled. Some heroes announced their presence with thunder and afterburners. Others sit quietly in seat 12A, reading manuals, staying ready. Both answer when called. Both bring people home. And both know that retirement isn't about leaving the fight. It's about choosing which battles matter most. For Sarah Mitchell, that battle would always be simple. Leave no one behind. The end.